I want people to understand this ordeal. It's taken a toll on both of us.
Casey Anthony's parents respond after 15 years of allegations.
I've gotten blamed for something I didn't do, and it tears me up inside.
This can change our life. This is serious.
This is their final response.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
For exclusive podcasts and more, sign up at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
Own iconic luxury items at unreal values with The Real Real, the leading reseller of authenticated luxury from top designers at up to 90% off retail. Every item is authenticated by The Real Real's team of experts, and new arrivals come in daily. New customers receive an automatic $25 off at checkout. Shop in-store, online, or download the app and get 20% off select items with the promo code REAL.
Real.
TheRealReal.com, promo code REAL.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On, the true crime review podcast that digs into podcasts, pop culture, and this week we'll look at the latest from Dan Taberski of Headlong, Missing Richard Simmons, and Surviving Y2K. It's called Running from Cops, and it's right in the middle of our wheelhouse. We'll also talk about that surprising twist at the end of last week's Game of Thrones, and find out if Toby was actually the Night King all along.
He was.
Joining me to get that done and more is my real-life husband and true crime co-author, former TV journalist, and our heroic substitute host, Kevin Flynn. Hello, Kevin.
Well, it was a tough job, Rebecca, but someone had to do it.
Are you recovering nicely from moderating the show last week?
Oh, you mean from doing all the work from the podcast while you went to Mexico with our kids and had a week's vacation in the sun?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'll be fine.
And also with us is journalist, true crime author, former defense investigator, licensed private investigator, resident rage walker, and future international cat smuggling kingpin, Laura Bricker. Hello, Laura.
That's me. And boy, do I have some cat stories for you guys.
Save it for the after show. Save it for Patreon. We're also going to talk on Patreon, by the way, about your inability to get home from a foreign country. It's all going to be on the after show this
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to have a whole episode of Leave It to Bricker about that, and I have some good tape.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Girl's always working, bringing her recorder to a foreign country.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, Laura, speaking of Leave It to Bricker, we didn't mention last time we brought this up, like a listener actually named your podcast. Who is that listener?
That would be Emily Van Norden from LA. And I have to apologize. So many people sent me name suggestions and their Twitter handles were like not really their real names. So I had to find out who she actually was because her Twitter handle was Superwoman.
How'd you know it wasn't Superwoman?
Well, I didn't. But now I know. This is like knowing who like Superman really is Clark Kent. So anyway, thank you very much, Emily. Alert. Yeah, there you go. The news is out. And I'm going to say is Leave It to Bricker to get stranded in San Juan for 9 hours, but record it.
Wow.
So tune in next week for that.
So you didn't technically record in a foreign country. You recorded in Puerto Rico. Which is not a foreign country, by the way, America.
Before we hear about, we have some really great listeners
we
from
sure
Puerto
do.
Rico.
That's part of our country.
Did I say foreign country
no, I did.
when I said that?
I didn't know
sorry.
that you weren't
I didn't know San Juan, yeah.
I didn't know you weren't talking about recording other places, which I think was also American territories. You actually weren't in a foreign country.
Yeah.
I was in a foreign country, though. Okay, I got my geography mixed up,
All right.
guys.
We don't want our international listeners to be upset.
They're all going to laugh at us.
Yeah. 23% of our listeners are from outside of the United States.
I think most of those are
salute
from Australia
Canada,
and the UK,
sure.
right, though? I mean, they love their true
Canada,
crime.
Australia,
Yeah.
the UK.
All right. Well,
and we're pretty big in Japan. In Kazakhstan, for some reason.
I think that's a bot.
It's a bot. All right.
And finally, our captain of woke cynicism, the author behind the noir novels known as the City Trilogy, and our Patreon book club host, Toby Ball. Good evening, Toby.
Hail, fair Rebecca.
What?
I bring you greetings from Castle Winterfell. Some such bullshit.
But how will I be able to see that it's you? Because it's pitch black there all of the time.
Here's a tip. Do not watch that episode if you've had a few drinks. It is even more confusing.
Oh, really? I thought I wasn't having enough drinks.
Well, we're going to talk about that in just a second. I just want to do a quick Patreon rundown plug for our listeners who are our patrons. There's a ton of new stuff up there. If you haven't been checking your email, there's going to be an after show from tonight's show, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be Laura Bricker's adventures. Toby's podcast about Fatal Vision, the book club, is going to be on the feed by the time this podcast drops, and a brand new Married with podcast. There's a whole lot there. A whole lot.
We're all doing overtime.
Overtime.
For our Patreon.
We're working hard for your $6, people. We're working real hard for your $6.
Yeah. We don't want you ever to say we didn't give you anything.
$6.
Yeah.
Really. It's a lot. It's a lot. And you get that like a lot of times a month. Anyway. All right. Well, before we get into the show, we actually have an update that we want to share with our audience. And it's the personal nature. And I'm not going to have you do an echoey voice, Kevin, but this is a Kevin Flynn health update. And it is going to affect our future production schedule for the next few weeks. So we just want to share it with you guys now. Kevin, we're springing this on you.
Okay. Well, as you know, I had surgery for thyroid cancer last month, and I still have cancer, and I need another surgery, which will be in about 2 weeks. And it's not the path we thought we'd be taking, but that's where we're going. It's been, hard having to explain this to my children and my wife and my parents, but I've had such incredible support from our listeners. It's surprising how many of them have had something similar, especially thyroid cancer. And they've been really great about sharing their stories with me. And although I know that this is the prognosis is excellent, just every time we thought it was one thing, it ended up being something else. And the people who do this every day kept getting fooled. And so, I mean,
it sucks.
Yeah. I mean, someone's the 1% out of the 99%. And I'm hoping it's not me.
Right.
And I'm concerned about, what this might do to my speaking voice in the short and long term. And I don't know how that's going to affect podcasting. But we've demonstrated already that we can we get a fill-in, and the show will continue to chug along. So if I have to miss a week or two, I'm sure the three of you can find a suitable replacement temporarily.
Can we find a replacement that's as sexy, though? That's the question.
I don't know. I'm just I'm way too sexy. So so it continues, and I look, radiation is also probably down the road for me, but I want to thank all the listeners, and reached out on Twitter and sent emails and continued to do that. It's tough telling you this, but in the end, it's going to be good. There's a lot of you who've been through it, continue to go through it, and so I take strength in what you've done and what you're giving me, and you're a great gift. And that's my health update.
I mean, Kevin, I think that, obviously I'm more in the loop on this than people who are hearing you talk about it. Yeah, I mean, I think our audience is wonderful because they're here for us no matter what, but also they're really pulling for you. And of course, if you need to take time off, it's fine. Oh, I am your boss.
Okay, boss says
you
it's
can have
okay.
The time. You can take the time.
All right. I don't have to file a complaint.
Very generous.
Yeah, the Labor Relations Board.
You have to file a grievance, Kevin.
Grievance.
An HR complaint to me. So, Kevin, is it okay with you if we pick up this conversation and kick off our after show this week and talk more about this? Because I know that Toby and Laura probably have questions because this is the first time they're hearing about it too.
Yeah, I didn't want to say anything until I found out more, and I found out today.
Found out, yeah. So we'll talk about it more on the after show. All right, so moving on. Kevin, are you ready to get into the show this week?
Hell yeah.
So I really want to talk about last week's Game of Thrones, even though I know by the time this episode drops, there will be another episode for us to talk about, episode 4. But as my son Henry put it, episode 3 of Game of Thrones, everybody knew it was going to be this epic episode.
Episode 3 was, oh my God.
As a fan, I thought, wow. As a DP, I thought, fuck.
If you take Hardhome and you take Bob and you take the lake and you add them together, add a 5x4, you have episode 3.
And it is relatively rare these days in the era of on-demand content that there is a television event that captures like the TV viewer imagination to the scale that Game of Thrones has managed to do for this long a period of time. And last week's episode was up there. It was a television event of the
There's no more must-see TV.
Of the Who Shot JR magnitude, correct?
Yeah.
So that's why I just wanted to talk about it and kind of get your guys' reactions to it. We are going to be discussing spoilers for the end of episode 3 of Game of Thrones. I do think the statute of limitation has passed on that. But skip past this if you don't want to hear it, because we're going to talk about how it ends. Lara Bricker, what did you think of Arya Stark flying out of the sky, doing that little knife trick and stabbing our frenemy, the Night King, in that little midi t-shirt hole that he had there? And saving all of humanity in the moment. Lara Bricker, what did you think of that ending of the episode?
It was just so fucking awesome because not only was it Arya, but it's like a girl and it's a badass girl. And if you think back to the beginning when she was like, season 1 and she's this little girl and she wants to learn how to like use her sword.
I had the blacksmith make it for you special. I won't hack a man's head off, but it can poke him full of holes if you're quick enough.
I can be quick.
You'll have to work at it every day. How's it feel? Do you like the balance?
I think so.
First lesson. Sticking with the pointy end.
I know which end to use.
It was just perfect. But I was totally not expecting it. I was like, whoa, where did that come from? My other girl power moment of the episode was when, what's her name? Is it Lyanna? Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Lyanna Mormont, who stabbed the giant in the eye while she was being killed. I was just like, I love that we've got these like badass girls taking on the army of the dead.
Yeah.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. Kevin, what did you think about the ending of episode 3 of Game of Thrones?
I was going, whoa! We had a bunch of people over, and I threw my hands up like it was a football game.
Yes.
Yeah, it was great. It was a good ending, and finally, we could finally see some of the action happening. It was so dark.
It was dark.
It was so confusing. I still don't know who died. I'm like, I'm still waiting. And like, is next week going to be like all these people were like, oh, we didn't know they died?
You mean this week, the one that happened last night?
Yeah.
This week.
You'll know by the time this episode drops. I mean, very few people died. And I think the internet has exhaustively talked about how dark the episode was.
Mm-hmm. Figuratively.
And I am just going to say the sound was very fucking poorly mixed again.
Yeah.
But I do know that it works on headphones and on small screens. So whatever. That subject has been well trod. Toby, I know that you are not a huge fan of the show. So I'm dying to hear your doubting Thomas, Captain of Cynicism take on episode 3 of the final season of Game of Thrones. Lay it on us, Toby.
Well, first of all, it's not so much that I'm not a fan. It's just I don't watch it. So
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I know what he's getting at.
Wait, doesn't that literally mean you're not a fan if you don't watch it?
Well, sometimes you say I'm not a fan, meaning I don't like it.
Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to I just don't watch it. That's what he means.
Right.
It's like you're not in hell, you're just in purgatory.
Go ahead, Toby.
So there are a couple things. One of which is when you're watching it with like absolutely no context, like this is the worst kind of episode to watch because literally all it is just people like battling. And if you don't know who they are, you don't really give a shit.
Right.
So it just, after a while, I just fast forwarded. I was like, is this going to be a battle the whole time? And it was. So I watched like 40 minutes and I just fast forwarded through the rest.
Yep.
Because it was hard to see. And I couldn't tell if that was like good, like for me, because I didn't really know anybody. So I didn't really care. Or whether it was just more frustrating.
Watch that shadow kill that
Because
shadow.
I didn't know what the hell was going on. And then the other thing was that the thing I didn't get, and maybe this is because I haven't watched it, but it seemed like if they were really thinking things through, they would have just had the dragons just blast them all before they even got going.
And not send out those poor Dothrakis who got completely obliterated.
Yeah,
for
they just
no
all
reason.
got killed, and then they waited for everybody to like kind of like flow in. and then they were going up and down the line, but I wasn't sure if they were actually getting other people too or whatever. So I wasn't quite sure what was going on with that either.
Yeah. John and Danny were freaking useless in this episode. They were useless.
Well, I don't know. I felt pretty bad for Danny at the end. I have to say that I got pretty emotional when Jorah got killed.
Yeah.
I was not as emotional as I was like, that poor guy. I mean, Jesus, he didn't even get laid. Now he's dead.
He also got all of his skin peeled off by Samwell Tarly with a pair of tweezers.
I know. All that stuff. And then he's like, then they propped him up the last time. And I'm like, oh my God, this is just horrendous.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that was disingenuous about that to me is she was crying for him, and it was like this moment of like what could have been, and like nothing could have been. No, it was never going to happen.
No.
No, yeah.
No.
He was just her dependable high school friend that was always going to be that guy.
You know, in the books,
just like Ducky.
Oh, you're going to be that guy right now, the in the books guy?
I was going to say, in the books, yeah, he totally has a longing for her. That's very apparent. But also in the book, she is like 16 years old.
Yeah.
And he's like in his 40s or something like
Ew.
that.
Okay.
You know who he looks like?
Saying.
How much does he look like? Remember Richard Chamberlain, who played Father Whatawaste in the Thornbirds?
Yeah.
Doesn't he look like Richard Chamberlain?
He looks like the guy from Downton Abbey.
He is the guy from Downton Abbey. Everyone on this show has been on Downton Abbey at some point.
You know nothing.
So speaking of British actors, Laura, have you noticed that our favorite British all-lady cop show, the Rizzolian Isles of the UK, Scott and Bailey, the actor Saran Jones is now on that new HBO show that's coming out.
Gentleman Jack?
Yeah.
Yes, Gentleman Jack. Aren't you so excited? Maybe we'll talk about that in the show.
I am, because I need something else to watch now. I'm like, geez, what am I going to watch? Well, I'm still in, obviously Game of Thrones, but this was the big one this week.
And if you like ladies and cops and stuff that happens in the UK, guys, you should watch Scott and Bailey. It's super fun. It's not super heavy, but it's super fun. Right, Laura?
It is. I binged it, and I saved the last 2 episodes because last season was only 2 episodes, and I just couldn't bring myself to watch them for the longest time because I just didn't want it to be over. It was like my favorite thing. I thought I was like their personal friend by the end of it.
Yeah.
I loved it so much.
Final Game of Thrones question before we move on. Predictions? Is there going to be another twist, and who's going to sit on the Iron Throne? Kevin, starting with you.
Am I supposed to guess who's going to be on the Iron Throne?
Yes. Or what do you? How do you think the series is going to resolve?
I still think it's supposed to be Jon Snow, and that Tyrion will die in a heartbreaking way because we love him too much, and a lot of other people will die. And Jaime's going to kill Cersei.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think Tyrion will be killed by Bronn, the sellsword. Those are my predictions.
Okay. Toby, you have no predictions because you don't know anybody, right?
Oh, I have predictions.
Oh, what are your predictions?
Oh, goody.
Yeah,
I can't wait to hear this. Give some predictions, Toby.
Toby's like, it's going to plagiarize Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Just like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo
Exactly.
plagiarized that other thing.
I just want Dinklage to make it out alive.
What about you, Laura? What are your predictions for the end of the series?
It's hard to, because like you have what you kind of were like, oh, I hope it's Jon Snow or that him and, Dany finally get together and they
are
rule together. Well, but that they stay together because now there's a little bit of like friction there because he's the actual rightful heir.
And because she's his aunt. Ew.
Yeah, because it's fucking creepy. So I don't know. So you're like, okay, what's gonna, so you kind of hope that. But at the same time, now, I don't know if you've all seen this like conspiracy theory that's going around that Bran, how do you say it? Bran
is the Night King.
Bran.
Yes.
Yeah. So that he is actually like not up to good trying to help people, that he actually has like some other motive about what he's doing.
Yeah.
So that's going to be kind of interesting. I don't know. I kind of am hoping that Jaime Lannister and now the knighted Brienne actually finally get it on because that is really what I've been waiting for.
All right. I'm going to say Sansa is going to either be on the Iron Throne or be the ruler, but from the north.
Mm-hmm.
Jaime is going to kill Cersei. The Hound is going to kill the Mountain.
Yes, I predict that.
And Dany and Jon are both going to die.
Oh.
I don't know. Dany's going to die
Ooh.
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, she's turning into the Mad Queen. That's how I feel about it. Don't at me, guys.
Yeah.
All right. So
Don't at me.
should we move on with our other discussion of the evening?
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's get it done. Let's get into our true crime podcast review. This is what people are paying the big bucks for. Not really.
No, they're not. All right, okay.
Dan Taberski's podcast anthology, now known as Headlong, is back for a third season. After missing Richard Simmons and surviving Y2K, Taberski is Running from Cops, a 6-part series looking at the long-running reality show about law enforcement and the bad guys they chase down while on patrol.
In 1989, a new show popped up on primetime television that was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. The concept? Follow real police officers with video cameras as they arrest real citizens.
I would say that in the history of television, this is a pretty grand statement, there is no simpler, better show than the format of Cops.
Cops was the first real reality show. Now, 30 years and over 1,000 episodes later, not only is Cops still on, it's everywhere. On cable, in syndication, it's on 15, sometimes 20 times a day. Just this past week, it was on 70 times. A constant drumbeat about policing in America.
With his usual humorous touch, Dan probes whether these TV ride-alongs accurately portray everyday policing, what it's done to the public's perception of law enforcement, and whether the on-camera suspects are fair game. New episodes of Running from Cops are coming out weekly on all the apps, but the entire series is now available on Stitcher Premium, and we have listened to it all. So we are going to be talking about plot points from the whole series. I don't think so much that it will ruin it for people who have not listened yet, but if you want to avoid any mention of the last couple of episodes of Running from Cops, you may want to skip to the spoiler-free review in our show notes. I have to tell you guys something about Dan Taberski and this season of Headlong Running from Cops.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Toby, I'm going to read you a DM that Dan sent me on Twitter several months ago. Are you ready?
Oh, no.
He was talking about this season, which was coming out, and he said, I don't want to oversell it, but you all, I hope, are going to flip when you hear our new season coming out. And then he said, maybe, just maybe, this will be my first legit thumbs up from Toby Ball. Maybe. So here we have Dan Taberski, very successful podcaster, who does not necessarily need the Crime Writers On bump and cares very much. Even though you technically gave a thumbs up to Surviving Y2K, it was not super enthusiastic. He cares very much about whether or not you, Toby Ball, like this season of his podcast. So, Toby, do you just want to spoil us right now? Is Dan going to be disappointed or happy?
Taberski's just going to have to sweat it out for about another 25 minutes.
Good answer. Good answer.
Goodness.
I like it. There's so much suspense in this episode.
There's a lot of suspense in this episode. Now, Kevin, one of the things this podcast promises in the first episode, because Taberski is very good at setting up premises of shows and promises and then delivering them, I think. He says this will change the way we all look at perennial reality show Cops forever. Did it change it for you?
I don't know if it did that for me. It's funny. He pointed out a lot of stuff that in retrospect, you're like, yeah, that was sort of like right there. You know, it was hiding in plain sight. You know, a lot of the things about, you know, like why would somebody pay, you know, sign the release and, you know, all the different stuff about arrests and the reason that police departments, nonetheless, it was very eye-opening. And, you know, the example that they gave of suspected police misconduct that made it into the show, was also very troubling. I didn't really have a terribly high opinion of Cops. I didn't have a low opinion of it.
Yeah.
I kind of understood it for what it was and kind of already, knew that, this stuff's all edited down. And so it's not going to be this is what happens in 5 minutes of a real traffic stop.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people feel that way.
Well, one of the things that I love about the way Dan does these stories, and I do think he selects stories that he's particularly well suited to tell on purpose. He's smart that way. He is an unabashed television consumer, right?
Yep.
And he admits, he doesn't spend time in the podcast telling us, this is what Cops is. This is why it's important. This is why we're doing the podcast. He's just like, I've watched hundreds of episodes of this TV show. It's on all the time. You may not think it's popular, but it's really freaking popular. It's on 70 times a day.
Jesus.
Laura, his like pop culture sensibility and his ability to sort of like bring us into this landscape, can you relate to that? I know you're not like a huge Cops viewer, but do you feel like that is a relatable, and does it make him the right person to tell this kind of story?
No, I think it does, because I mean, I think I've watched Cops like a handful of times and I was like, yeah, this show is stupid. I'm not watching this anymore. Like, it just irritated me because it was just so kind of over the top, like Jerry Springer or something. But I feel like he kind of appreciates it for what it is. So especially when he's out doing interviews with people, I love the little asides that he throws in about don't say that, or you better not admit this. And then he just throws in like some random stuff about like the Golden Girls and how he also likes to. And I'm like, I appreciate the Golden Girls too, because it's kind of like nice background. It's very soothing. Like, it's very calming to watch the Golden Girls.
Oh, it's not soothing. Golden Girls is hilarious.
But it is. It's just kind of like relaxing. So no, I think it's definitely, he's the right one to tell it. Also because of his background, working in reality TV, which he brings up as he's talking, he kind of has a window into what's going into making the show. So, yeah.
Well, I do want to just drop a quick clip because you did mention Dan's asides. And I said this before when we've reviewed his other podcasts. The reason I think Dan Taberski is one of the very best people doing podcasting right now is that he writes for himself so well.
Some might say local government meetings are boring and really long.
I've been waffling on what I was going to speak on. I had several issues. I would just like to read.
On the other hand, some say they're really long and boring.
It's the 10 Commandments.
Petrocelli looks exactly like he sounds. He is meaty, just a big brick wall of a guy.
And to source level.
Big and beefy.
Now, Toby, one of your first notes to me about this podcast is one of the most interesting notes you've sent, I think, before we've done one of these shows. And you said, and I quote Toby Ball, "This is the most political thing I think we've ever talked about." What do you mean by that?
Well, I guess Cops is the most political thing that we've had, I think, a show that talks about it in ways that kind of expose, the politics behind it. And so that I think it's hard to talk about both Cops and then talk about running from Cops without it getting, at least in some ways, political, because what Cops really does is it lays out this vision of what's going on in our country that, I think is at odds with reality, but I think does feed into political things that some people try to promote and try to use as excuses to do things.
Right.
I think it's as much as we possibly can, we keep real politics out of this. But I think in this particular case, it's really hard to talk about this stuff without talking about sort of, what's the ultimate goal of this and what's the effect it has on the people who are viewing it and then the choices that they later make. And so I guess that was my point, is that I think it's hard to have a conversation about this without it getting political.
Well, I think the podcast goes there. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about it. And I think, his episodes with the sheriff, his conversations with Sheriff Ozzie, who is, to me, one of the more frightening characters we've met in any podcast that we've heard interviews with law enforcement, and his take on, hate and violence. And he's not talking about white supremacists. He's talking about something else that is disturbing.
Because 5 cops died because of radicalized hate. That's why. We all saw that coming. Everybody in this nation should have seen that coming. Every leader in this country should have seen that coming. And we did nothing to prevent it. We allowed that hate to divide this nation. And that's what LIPD is struck into. This nation is fed up with that.
For me, one of the huge revelations of the podcast is the performative nature of Cops and how it has influenced not only socialized Americans on how it's okay for police to behave, but how it's trained future cops for how cops behave. Super interesting stuff. And kind of
We hear
political.
about that in episode 6.
Yeah.
Towards the very end, about how the cops who are coming up now, it's been on the air for 30 years, that they grew up watching this.
We hear it in episode 1 with the little kids playing cops.
Yeah, playing cops.
Like totally, like authentically, it was like kind of stunning.
Sure. I found this video on YouTube. It was made pretty recently. It's 2 kids who recorded themselves playing cops. Not cops and robbers, but cops.
Oh, there's the suspect right there. We're going to chase him down.
They're maybe 10, 11. They're in a big field in the country. One kid is driving around in an ATV, that's his cop car, and he's chasing his buddy, who is the suspect.
Get down on the ground!
Mimicking perfectly the language and the cadence and the tactics of the police on a show that was launched before these kids were even born.
Get down on the ground now!
And kids have always played cops and robbers and always will, but it's interesting to see how the TV show has influenced how the kids play that, but also how the actual officers conduct themselves, and how they conduct themselves more particularly in front of a camera.
Right.
And while the incident from Georgia, I believe, is where the court case comes from, we hear about in the first episode. Dan doesn't say this, but we all sort of know that this looks an awful lot like this cop tampered with the evidence and planted so that the test would be. And why? Because he does this all the time? Maybe, maybe not, but it seems more likely that he did it because he'd been there for 5 nights and didn't get an arrest and wants to be on the TV show. So, you definitely can see, the way that it changes, just the presence of the cameras themselves change the conduct of the officers, and the presence of the TV show itself changes the conduct of law enforcement. And that also changes the public's perception about what law enforcement does and what it should do, and what the life of a cop should be. And it's not like that. You certainly don't watch cops and see them going to get coffee.
Do you ever meet someone who seems kind of off? Whether it's a creepy neighbor or random phone number that keeps calling you, Truthfinder has you covered. You can search for people by name, address, phone number, email, and more. Truthfinder can be especially helpful for running confidential background checks on anyone you're planning to meet from online dating apps. Go to truthfinder.com/podcasts for a special offer. That's truthfinder.com/podcasts to access your special offer today.
I never did anything to harm my daughter or my granddaughter.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's Parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
Now, I do want to talk about a little bit about the story structure of Running from Cops. It's a little bit different from some of the other... Yes.
Oh, okay.
A little bit different from some of the other podcasts that Dan Taberski has put together, which I think of as more twisty and turny type podcasts. Mm-hmm. Missing Richard Simmons was very much like a week by week as things happened. He changed editorial. I think Surviving Y2K was very much like it took a turn. It took left turns and then right turns. And, it ended up being something very different than you thought it was going to be at the beginning. Yes. Yeah. And this is structured much more, I think, traditionally in some ways, where there is actually a thread that begins in episode 1 that then is followed through the episodes, and we hear in the several threads, but the way that it's sort of framed is around the city of Spokane, Washington, and their city council president, Ben Stuckert, who is trying to get TV, reality, police stuff more regulated in their city.
Yeah.
Now, Toby, before the break, we were talking about this being a political story. And there's literally a political story in the story. And I'm curious to know, what did you think of the way that Dan structured this season, especially compared to the previous seasons of this podcast that have been less traditional? Do you think that it worked, that he had threads and characters that we kept kind of revisiting throughout the series?
Oh, yeah, I definitely think it worked. And I think there's that one big switch in the middle, right, where they start talking more about PD Live, is that what it's
Live
called?
PD.
Or Live PD?
Yes.
Yeah, which I had never even heard of.
Which I like to call What Can Possibly Go Wrong. Yeah. As soon as I heard that show was coming on.
The most DVR'd TV show of the year.
2 million viewers. It's an incredible number of viewers. Yeah.
Anyway, no, I thought it was good. I thought the whole it was smart on like a number of levels, I think, and one of which was it does kind of give you a little preview of like a decision that they make when they realize they're having too many people of color on getting hassled on cops. So they go and try and find a place where there's a bunch of white people who get in trouble. And that turns out to be Spokane. And I think he makes the point, which, you know, has really been my, like, why I don't watch Cops, is that it's about humiliating poor people, essentially. And Spokane apparently is a fairly poor city. So you go where the poor people are. I thought it was very good. And I thought, it turns out to be, as things go on, it turns out to be how smart that choice is becomes more and more apparent as you go on in the show.
Yeah, and I think some of the most affecting tape in this podcast is when Dan talks to people in that community who have been, Live PD was a thing that this was sort of this section of the show, who have been on that particular show over and over and over again. And the producers of that show are clearly targeting them because they know they make for good TV. And Dan does what I think are some of the most sensitive and practical and informative interviews with these people who were actually arrested on live TV.
I didn't start actually really remembering things until I was in booking. I woke up in booking, and I guess I had a mask on my face. And
a what?
A mask on my face, because I guess I was spitting. And it was just really embarrassing, you know.
Can I ask you, is that something that happens? Have you blacked out before? Often? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
Not often. Probably like the fourth time I blacked out when the police are around.
Laura, what did you think of that section of the podcast where we hear from people who've been on Cops? We hear from people who've been on, live PD, and we hear Dan interacting with them. Did you like those sections as much as I did?
I did. It makes me kind of nostalgic for my defense investigator, public defender days, because that was one of the things that used to really piss me off when there was like a story that came out and somebody got arrested, and it's like splashed all over the place, and then say the person is either acquitted or, maybe not guilty of what they were charged with. That's not splashed all over to the same degree. And also there's always a story behind what's going on. And, I liked, we had the woman who had like literally just gotten out of jail, ridden the bus for 3 hours. And, she had no recollection. I felt horrible. She was the one, she went in the like pink socks in the snow, who was just super drunk. I appreciated that he went and found these people. That must have been very hard to track these people down. But the other part that I thought was really kind of, enlightening, but also like bizarre was when they were talking about the live PD show, how like everybody knew somebody that had been on the show. They're like, oh yeah, so-and-so was on the show. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, and how they would go back to the same place like 6 times trying to get somebody to answer the door. It was just nuts.
Yep.
So I appreciated that was brought to light because that sort of made the picture a little bit more realistic.
Laura, did you ever go on like a ride along during a drug sweep or anything like that?
Well, when I was, first when I was a journalist, I did go. I got a call. One of my most exciting moments is when I got a call about a dog fighting ring, and I just was told to be at a certain location at a certain time, and I was like out hiding in the bushes with the photographer, and so I watched it all sort of play out, and that was very well orchestrated and low key. So not quite how it's portrayed on Cops.
A couple times when I was in radio and then in TV, the police would invite us along for when they're going to have an operation where they're going to be rounding up 10, 20 different people, and y'all get in a van and everybody jumps out at the same time, and it is objectively exciting. There's an adrenaline thing, and it's just, which is why when the car chase is on TV, they are exciting, regardless of whether you say, well, you're going to start talking about probable cause and other things like that. Your body just reacts to that, to watching that.
Oh, yeah.
But, one of the things that I found interesting, I've never done and will not ever do, we're going to go in with the camera behind you as you kick in the door. Like the Geraldo Rivera example, which sort of set the precedent
fuck that
we're
guy.
going to go in with camera rolling. You're not going to put a fake
mustache on,
with
Kevin?
A Yosemite Sam mustache and a bandana?
Yeah. Well, in the state, they determined that a judge ruled that the police have the authority to enter a home for this, circumstance. But what the police can't do is also deputize or extend that authority to a journalist. So as far as we're walking in with you, like right behind you with the camera and going through the house as you're going through the house. He said you can't do that. That's you don't have the right to do that. So it doesn't get done around here anymore.
Speaking of journalism,
Oh.
I want to throw something out there and see what you guys think, because it's something that occurred to me as I was like assembling my notes for the show.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Taberski does not couch himself as an investigative journalist when he does this. He very much presents himself as, I'm a guy who's interested in this topic and I know a lot about it because it's my background kind of overlaps with it. And this is the thing that I want to tell you guys about. He's a very sort of casual approach in. I just, in my notes, just think about the sourcing of this series, right? We have cops who are on Cops in the series. We have Stephen Chow, who's the creator of the series.
Mm-hmm.
We have the longtime producer of the series who actually makes the show, and his son who continues making the show. We have the police chief in Spokane. We have the academic, the professor who does the sort of analysis of the constitutionality of it. We have Laura's favorite character, the Anthony Burgess, who used to be a cop, is very pro-law enforcement, and has become a defense attorney and actually defended somebody in one of these cops' cases.
Yeah. There's not a box left unchecked.
I mean, anybody who could listen to this podcast and not come away with it, like the actual journalism that's happening in this show, the sourcing of this podcast is almost impeccable. I mean, I cannot think of a point of view which was not captured here.
The interesting thing to me was the data journalism.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Why was that interesting to you?
Well, again, instead of just saying, this is my impression of like what's going on in Cops, they did a super deep dive looking at 800 plus episodes.
That's right.
And capturing, what did he say, like 38,000 different data points?
That's right.
And it came up with some interesting things.
And some surprising findings.
Some very surprising. Toby was talking about the treatment of black suspects on the TV show. And after they have sort of made their adjustments, Dan's team determined that black suspects were arrested 28% of the time. And in real life, black suspects are arrested 29% of the time. So it does reflect, not a fairness thing, but it, like as he said, it reflects what's happening in the real world, which also is not a percentage of who's actually committing the crimes. But to that is not, as we would say, a distortion.
Right.
Okay. But the most interesting thing was that they said that in real life, traffic stops result in arrest 2% of the time. And on Cops, it's 92% of the time.
That's right.
That gives a skewed view of what is happening in law enforcement. And I think you really had to do and I would have liked to have heard a little more about the data. I wish he had a little more robust website where he could put some of this stuff. Because I think that's super fascinating.
I thought it was fascinating that, the data didn't show skewed numbers of arrests of black suspects, but that a disproportionate number of times the arrest of the black suspect happened in the hook of the show to get you to watch it, because they know that the audience likes to see that. They like to see a person of color getting chased and arrested. So they always put it at the beginning of the show because that's the hook. And then Dan explains, like, that's how reality shows are built. You do the hook first. And then he did the destroy, build, destroy comparison, which I don't think he named, but the name of the children's show that Dan Taberski used to produce was called Destroy, Build, Destroy. My kids used to watch it.
Right.
So, Toby, I know that you are not as trashy a TV consumer as I am. Like, I watch a lot of HGTV. I watch a ton of shitty reality shows. I watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Is it helpful for you to hear the construction of a reality show? And, I think we all agree that what this show does is terrible. But is it interesting to you to hear about why it's terrible? Like why the cops extend interactions and take a guy out of the car for 10 minutes when that's actually a super dangerous thing to do because the producers need more tape, or, why they are putting the black suspect chase to be in the episode. Is that interesting to you, or is it just horrifying? Like, what did you think of those sort of explanations in this podcast?
I mean, I think it's interesting and it's horrifying, and I think it sort of confirms suspicions that I had that, I don't think it's just with police, but whenever you put a camera on anybody, it changes the way you act, right? It becomes performative. And that's like MTV's, whatever that Real World show was. And
are you referring to The Real World?
The Real World, whatever the fuck that's called. And Jersey Shore and like all this stuff. It's like you get the camera and people are gonna act differently. I mean, that's just the way it is. So that was interesting. I think the fact that it's so popular and sort of portrays this sort of, hyper adrenalinized approach to police work And I was thinking back to other things that we've watched, and I was thinking about Flint Town and about how, you know, affecting it was after watching Flint Town. Like at the very end, they have this very like kind of chilled out traffic stop by this one cop with I think an African American teenage girl. And she starts off by giving her a fake name and stuff. Yep. And he's just like, look, why are you giving me a fake name? All this stuff. And it's just very sort of like, it doesn't escalate, you know? They just have, you know, she gets freaked out. They have sort of a kind of a nervous but calm conversation. And then he kind of sends her on her way. And I remember just thinking like, okay, like
we want more of that.
That's a good police interaction. And it seems like in Cops, and again, I haven't really watched it. Like I've seen the ads and stuff, but certainly the way the ads portray it is the exact opposite of that, which is like premium escalation at all times.
You know what that Flint Town traffic stop is? Bad TV.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not going to be, that's not the B block for episode 57, season 21 of Cops. But the next stop where they gave the bad name and then they find out they're on, there's an outstanding warrant and all the other stuff, that might make good TV. So the problem is that what is the actual profession of policing, which one of the retired officers talked about, he says he doesn't think it portrays the profession of policing. It doesn't do traffic stops and filling out paperwork and doing civil standbys and all
wellness checks.
Yeah, wellness checks and traffic stops that are just, okay, you were speeding, here's your ticket, or go have a nice day. It doesn't do the public safety thing that it could and should, because what makes for good reality TV? You know, it's the adrenaline.
Right. Well, Stephen Chow.
And also, like you say, confirming our suspicions about, you know, some of the motivations about airing this suspect and that suspect and this crime and that.
But Stephen Chow talks very transparently about that in the podcast, but this is a product. He made America's Most Wanted. Mm-hmm. When that show debuted, they arrested the most wanted person in America in 4 days.
Yeah.
And now he wanted to make another product. It's a product.
Yeah.
You can't think about it as it is trying to be news, but it's not its product. And Dan's explanation of the difference between what you can do on news, using the Roger Stone arrest as an example, you can observe but not interfere. You can show faces without a release because it's news, and that Cops pretends to be news, but it's actually embedded in the police department by invitation.
Yeah.
Which skews that relationship a little bit.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What did you think about the passage where they took a clip from, I guess it was season 1, and he said, this is what it could have been.
Yeah.
And it follows the female officer dropping off
the unnamed female officer.
Right.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be like more of a real slice of life, looking at a more complex policing issue.
It felt so current, too, because it had to do with addiction and like parents who were in over their heads.
What if it had been 30 years of that?
Yeah. I don't know. I think that America's relationship with police departments might look a little different if it had been 30 years. I really do. Knowing, like, now fully having the understanding of how popular this show is. I mean, I do think, and I can't say this enough. I mean, Dan talks about it like, you know, as being PR for police departments and all that stuff. I do think that part of the, you know, unintended consequence of this show is normalizing violent interactions between cops and citizens.
Yeah.
It's normalized them so that even later when the advent of the iPhone did happen and you'd see a cop arresting somebody without cause and you'd see them, you know, doing these violent restraints and stuff. If you've watched a million episodes of Cops, you've seen it a million times, so you don't realize it's wrong because you've seen it on TV a million times.
But these are the ones that the department okayed.
That's right.
You know, I don't watch cop shows, but my sense is that there's a certain amount of like sort of human element aspects of things and you know, heartstrings and all that stuff. And like if you can literally do whatever you want in a fictional cop show and you include that, like why wouldn't you think that would be a good thing to include in like a quote unquote reality cop show?
Right.
Where you're like, you know, it's not just slamming guys against the pavement and like stepping on their heads and, you know, getting them for possession of crack or whatever, but it's also dealing with people who are in distress and trying to help them out of their situation or whatever. Isn't that the kind of thing that people like to see as well? Because It certainly seems like people write that stuff into shows. seems like a choice they're not making.
But that's the thing, that the time pop culture has evolved, but Cops has not. I mean, right now in pop culture, we have, as absurd as it is, SVU. We have Olivia Benson, the most ridiculously empathetic character on television, as like our paragon super cop, right? And then we have, Cops still on doing the same stupid shit that if they did it on an episode of SVU, it would be like, you're a bad cop.
Yeah. But they do have those, and they do have, stops that are interactions that end up being like actually very funny and not consequential, but that's not predominantly what they're producing.
It's not what you see in the opening credits. Now, Laura, as I was listening to this podcast, I found myself wondering how you were reacting to some moments in this podcast. So I don't know if you can Richter scale for me 1 to 10 on a few things. If I just run down a list for you,
okay,
would that be okay?
Yeah, because there was some moments where I was getting pretty pissed. So
okay, so in the section where we hear that cops, the producers are cooperating with police departments and basically telling people who have been arrested on the show that if they don't sign a release to appear on the show, they could then be arrested for some other crime. Richter scale 1 to 10. How were you on that?
8.5.
Okay. When we had this section where Dan was talking to Dr. Powers, he's the expert witness in use of police force. He meant to talk to him about Y2K, but then he ended up talking to him about some of the constitutional rights violations in cops, and then they went through a couple of those rights violations: pretext stops, obtaining evidence, quote, in a manner that shocks the conscience with the flashlight in the mouth scene, the police dog chase, and why it is the cops want to do this on TV.
Oh my God, that one.
Where were you on the scale there?
So the flashlight in the mouth and the dog thing, I lost my mind. I was actually walking as I was listening to this. I'm gonna go to 9 on that, because the flashlight in the mouth and the dog thing were just absolutely fucking ridiculous and just so out of line. It just made me what is wrong with people? Anyway. Next.
All right. Next is we meet a character named Randy. He was on multiple times on that. I think he was on that live show, the live PD show. He then recorded a producer trying to get him to sign the release, and basically what the cop and the producer say to him is, the only guys who don't sign the release are usually guilty. And we also found out they paid him. And this is also, by the way,
$40.
Yeah, this is also, by the way, a show that is parading as news. They have Dan Abrams, an MSNBC host, as their host. What did you think of that interaction, especially when we hear Randy on camera during one of these live PD shoots telling the cops, please stop harassing me. I'm not in a gang. And then the cop reads his arrest record on live TV. Go.
That was the part. Okay, that was the part where I really started to, I just was this was fucking ridiculous part. It was where they were he has 87 bazillion arrests, and then they're actually no, he actually doesn't have all these arrests. You're counting every charge. He actually had been arrested 12 times, which, I mean, that sounds like a lot. It's really, when you're dealing with people that have been arrested, I used to deal with people doing defense work. That's not really that much, but to make it sound so inflated the way that they did on the show was just, it made me so angry. I was just, but you know what it is? It's that these cops are just playing to this TV show in such a way. And was that the one where the cop is now actually a special consultant to the show because he did such a good job? Or was that one of the other cops who then got a special job? Ugh.
All right. So one final one, Laura, you ready?
Okay. All right.
Ben Stuckert, Hero City Council president of Spokane, Washington, who wants to greatly limit the activities of reality shows involving policing because of the harm it does to citizens. We learned that he prints out his tweets. Where does that land you on the Richter scale?
I don't really understand why he prints out his tweets. I think I might have missed that part.
It's not how Twitter works. It's not how Twitter works.
Well, you know what? He's old school. He wants to have a record, so that when the next Y2K comes, he's got all his information ready to go when the internet crashes.
All right. Well, I think we're getting close to being able to do what we do and review the show. But before we do, I have one final question for you all.
Yeah.
Toby Ball, what is your drag name? The first pet and the street where you lived, as Dan explains to us on this podcast. Toby Ball, what is your drag name?
On the street where I live now?
When you were
childhood
growing up.
street and first pet.
Omar Shore.
Wow.
It's not bad. What about you, Kevin? What is your drag name?
Heidi Linden.
Oh, that's so good.
It's a good one, right?
What about you, Laura? What is your drag name, childhood pet, and street where you lived?
I'm trying to remember which dog came first. So I'm going to give you two that you can choose from. We can either have Bridget Valley or Liebchen Valley.
Wow.
Liebchen Valley.
It's good.
Liebchen.
Yeah.
I am Ginger Maryland, by the way.
Ginger Maryland.
Ginger Maryland.
You make a great drag queen. Yeah.
All right, let's do what we do. I think Kevin's is the best. Heidi what?
Linden.
Heidi Linden.
Linden
It's
Street,
hot.
yeah.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's give Dan Taberski's Headlong Running from Cops, Season 3 of his podcast series, a thumbs up or thumbs down review and briefly explain why you are giving that review. Laura Bricker, I'm going to start with you.
I am going thumbs up. I really liked it, even though it did enrage me. It helped me get back into my exercise routine after vacation because I walked like 15 minutes longer than I expected to because I was so like pissed off at things that were happening. But it's great because, you know, I've watched a few episodes of Cops. I don't watch it that much. If it's on, I sing the little song just because it's kind of catchy. But I really think it was good in that it shed light on the show in such a way that it really brought out how society has been affected by this show in terms of perception of cops and policing and the way that it actually works versus how it works on TV. Thumbs up. And also, I love all the little sides, like just totally random things that happen, like the city council assistant who's like putting on the armrest for the chair in one scene. So there's some kind of like quirky things, which I appreciate as well.
Yeah, me too. I think I'm going to give my review next, by the way, because I want to make Dan wait another minute for Toby's review. I think that Dan Taberski is better at telling this kind of story than anybody else in podcasting. I think he is a superstar of this genre. I will continue to listen to anything that he makes, and I think this show did not disappoint. I loved it. This was a real look at a very, very important influence on our criminal justice system that nobody has talked about before. He traces it historically back to Dragnet, which I thought was fascinating, and the cooperation between law enforcement, which is the state, and TV production companies, which is the media, which is truly a frightening concept. And he makes it clear that it's frightening without frightening you as a listener. As a listener, you are entertained, you are drawn into the story, you learn a whole lot. But this is also pretty freaking terrifying and also funny because it's Dan Taberski. So huge thumbs up for me. I love the series Running from Cops. Toby Ball, Dan Taberski is really hoping to get a legit, untainted thumbs up from you someday.
Oh.
Where are you on Headlong Running from Cops? I'm super nervous. What do you think, Toby Ball?
Well, first of all, I did find it terrifying. This whole sort of nexus of the state and the media, and then like with a real directed purpose about what its sort of worldview is that it's trying to get across to people. Yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, it's right up my alley. You know, I think his past couple things, like Dan, obviously, he's a really good writer and he's really good at making podcasts. And in the last two things I had my little issues with, but this thing I thought was great. Yeah, I just really, really enjoyed it. No hesitations, no qualms, no nothing. I just think it's really well done. It's smart. It's thoughtful. You know, I think he kind of elevates what the concept was to something again, which I think at moments is kind of profound. So anyway, like big thumbs up for me.
Wow, I'm so excited and I'm so relieved. Now, Kevin, don't fuck this up.
I won't.
What is your thumbs up or thumbs down review?
Dan Taberski just pushed that South by Southwest film trophy off of his shelf to make place to print out this tweet and frame it, saying that Toby Ball finally gave him a thumbs up.
An unadulterated thumbs up.
An unadulterated thumbs up.
Toby did give him a thumbs up for Surviving Y2K, but it was with reservations.
Yeah.
No reservations here. Kevin,
right.
Where are you on Running from Cops?
Running from Cops is great. It's not a Peabody Award-winning investigative piece of journalism. It's not meant to be. It does probably confirm more suspicions than sheds a light on something that we didn't know. But, you know, I always wanted to know, why would these people sign those forms?
Because people lied to them to get them to do that?
Fantastic. Yeah,
or they just didn't do it? They didn't ask?
Yes. This is my time, Rebecca. That was mostly a rhetorical question. Look, but what makes it is some solid journalism, some thoughtful research, covering all the bases in a very even-handed way. And it just is held together by Dan Taberski, who's the star. He's like Bing Crosby, just gleefully moving through the story. He's the Burlives snowman from
Dude, how old are you?
From Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. He's just charming, and he is, when you hear him do the interviews, it confirms that the person who is doing this is the person who is your narrator. I don't mean the same individual. I mean the same person, right? He's authentic. He has his asides. Does he need to have like the Simpsons sound effects, like when he's talking about the Simpsons? Probably not. But look, you're going to forgive him because he's just tap dancing his way right through this in a very joyful way that is also both informative and entertaining. Big thumbs up. I want Dan Taberski to come over, tuck me in, and tell me a bedtime story.
Yeah, me too.
Do you ever meet someone who seems kind of off? Whether it's a creepy neighbor or a random phone number that keeps calling you, Truthfinder has you covered. You can search for people by name, address, phone number, email, and more. Truthfinder can be especially helpful for running confidential background checks on anyone you're planning to meet from online dating apps. Go to truthfinder.com/podcasts for a special offer. That's truthfinder.com/podcasts to access your special offer today.
I never did anything to harm my daughter or my granddaughter.
The test is about to begin. Please remain still.
Casey Anthony's Parents, the lie detector test. Watch now, only on A&E. And watch next day on the A&E app.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
Ooh, the train is going by Laura's house.
I know, the train.
Here comes some good special effects. Let's just enjoy them for a minute.
I have good Foley all the time.
Are we going to have another haunting train whistle?
There it goes.
Oh, there it goes. It's like breakdown.
Yeah.
Can you do like a little Bill thing right now? Like as if he is hearing these train sounds and explaining the breakdown.
Wow. There's a train. They used to call that the Iron Horse. It's bringing stuff to people far away. Like cars and plasma TVs.
I think this is the gravel train, Kevin.
It's bringing gravel. That way you can pave your driveway.
You can put a drainage ditch around your house.
Right. Need something to fill up the base of that basketball hoop? That train's coming your way. Just look for old number 7.
Oh, it's slowing down. Maybe it's dropping some stuff off.
You want to have a rock fight behind Laura Bricker's house? Run to the gravel
I'm always afraid
train.
someone's going to hop off it. Like someone's going to ride along and I'm going to wake up and like,
you mean a hobo?
Kill me.
You mean an actual hobo?
You mean like hobo Americans?
I'm serious. I have a barn on my property. It'd be a really good hideout for a hobo. Who hopped the train? Just saying.
Now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the crime
of the week.
The week. I haven't read this, Kevin. Here we go.
Go for it.
An Indiana man is suing his parents for doing the unthinkable, throwing away his porn stash. Here's the rub. Nice. It's not a mere pile of treasured girly magazines. Court paperwork says the collection consisted of $29,000 worth of pornographic tapes, DVDs, and sex toys, which filled 14 moving boxes. The man, identified in documents only as Charlie, moved in with his parents in Michigan following his divorce. After some kind of dispute, the man left 10 months later and moved to the Hoosier state. When his parents dropped off the boxes of his belongings, the treasures of his spank bank were not included. The Detroit Free Press says a frustrated Charlie filed a criminal complaint against his parents. But in a stroke of bad luck, the sheriff declined to press charges. You just keep doing it over and over again, Kevin. Charlie confronted his father, who said they spent the better part of a day destroying the porn.
What?
Dad said they got rid of his cache of smut for Charlie's own good. If they can't beat the rap, the parents may have to pay for the cost of replacement and damages. Nicely done, Kevin. So, panel, it surely took Charlie a long time to amass such a collection only to see it get tossed off.
Oh, God.
What item do you think he will miss the most? Laura Bricker, what do you think?
I had no idea. So I have some actual porn names for you
right.
of actual movies. 10-inch Mutant Ninja Turtles. Instead of Full House, you've got Full Holes.
Nice.
Oh.
Mighty Muffin Pounder Rangers. Or perhaps Strokemon.
Nice.
Oh.
Nice. We're using your personal laptop or your work laptop when you did those searches?
I'm
Laura
using
Bricker?
my iPhone, and now I'm afraid that I'm going to start getting pop-up things.
Yeah.
That was,
Right.
yeah.
Well, you got that like family share feature that's going to pop up on everybody's.
It's going to pop up on Will's phone. Oh, God.
All right. Toby Ball took Charlie a long time to amass his collection of smut, only to see it get tossed off. What do you think he's going to miss the most?
Well, this goes back to the 90s. There was a movie called Legends of the Fall with Brad Pitt.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw that.
Of course he did.
All right. Well, a buddy of mine back in D.C. got drunk. It was like, if I ever make a porno movie, it's going to be called Legends of My Balls.
And that is a new special Patreon podcast available to our listeners. Kevin Flynn, what do you think poor Charlie is going to miss the most?
His crunchy sock.
Oh, God. Ew.
All right. Well, we should probably end it on that very classy note. Sorry, parents listening with your children. Laura Bricker, before we wrap up the show this week, do we have a cat of the week?
We do have a cat of the week, courtesy of my stranding in the San Juan airport. So I put out the call to our listeners, if anybody could give me some suggestions of things to do since I was stranded there. Instead, they sent me cat pictures. So I would like to thank, and I don't know their real names, Bunny Cha Cha for sending Henry and Iggy. Minty with her dog. Miss Wifey had a cat parade. Kate C. had Hurley the cat on a tropical scratching post. And Howard just had a really nice looking white and gray cat. But I actually left the airport and met a one-eyed cat in San Juan and discovered there is legit an entire street of cats in Old San Juan.
Nice.
So anyway, it was fate.
All right, Laura Bricker, we want to entertain you the next time you are stranded in Puerto Rico trying to get home from your April vacation. How can they find you on Twitter?
At Laura Bricker.
And Toby Ball, if Dan Taberski wants to send you a tweet to thank you for your unqualified thumbs up review for his podcast, Running from Cops, how can he and he alone find you on Twitter?
Well, if he does do that, I'm going to recommend a story for him to read. Spokane is actually the hometown of one of my favorite authors, Jess Walter, who wrote this story called Statistical Abstract from My Hometown of Spokane, Washington, which I think it might have been in a magazine to begin with, but it's in a story collection called We Live in Water. Anyway, so if people are interested, it's a pretty interesting story. But if Dan wants to reach me, it's at TobyBallNH.
Wow, that took a left turn into some literary stuff. Kevin Flynn, people want to reach out to you with book recommendations, good wishes for the next part of your cancer journey. How can they find you on Twitter?
As always, I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
And if you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Crime Writers On, and I strenuously encourage you to join the amazing community in our official Crime Writers On Facebook group. We also have a regular Facebook page. Support the show on patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You'll get the after show, Married with Podcast, Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast, and Laura's Leave It to Bricker podcast. Our theme song was performed by the New York Ska Jazz Ensemble and used with permission. This show was recorded in the Yoga Loft above the Bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, the closet in our basement where hidden cameras capture the worst day of our lives. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you
later. Toby, what did you have for breakfast?
No.
No?
Toby, tell us about your first kiss.
What?
You want him to be able to talk about something.
Okay, no.
Look,
What?
all right. I was a junior in college, and I was super drunk.
His name was Tucker.
It's Tucker Carlson. Okay, we got it. We're good.
That's enough? Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely more than we needed. Okay.
Laura,
Laura.
how old were you when you...
Lost your teddy bear.
Oh, no.
No. How old were you when you had your first job, your first paying job?
I don't know. I was probably like 14, maybe. I don't know. What was my first paying job? I had so many different jobs.
Yeah.
I think my first real paying job was at this bed and breakfast when I first got my license.
Vermont girl.
Yeah.
Kevin, question for you.
Yes.
How many times did you vomit during your first sexual encounter?
Oh. Well, okay.
Oh my God, water just came out my nose.
I literally was telling this story at lunch today.
It's my
Not
all-time
the gory
favorite.
detail, not the sex detail.
God. It's my all-time favorite
Because the
story.
question at lunch was, what was the drunkest you ever got? And I don't know if this was the drunkest I ever got, but it was the best story. And I would say that I threw up 3 times.
Partners in Crime Media.
Own iconic luxury items at unreal values with The Real, the leading reseller of authenticated luxury from top designers at up to 90% off retail. Every item is authenticated by The Real's team of experts, and new arrivals come in daily. New customers receive an automatic $25 off at checkout. Shop in-store, online, or download the app and get 20% off select items with the promo code REAL. TheRealReal.com, promo code REAL.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.